Damn.
Hey everyone, welcome to Aero Sentinel's channel. Today we are going to go over quickly on the Yong Heng tips. This you don't have to follow them. This is just best practice for what's been working for us. We've had this for over almost 2.5 years now. Along with our other, we have 3 total. 1 is spare. In a box, haven't been opened, and 2 pretty much is rotational. So when we're using this and it's time to do maintenance on it, we go over this, not just replacing the oil, but we go over it, making sure that every bolt is nice and tidy still. It didn't vibrate loose. We check the wiring, we check amperage reading, that sort of deal. But you don't have to do those. But and we're not saying you follow this same thing, go get 2. No, you don't have to. Just 1 should be sufficient. But if you purchase 1, make sure to at least get spare gauge as part, and maybe a spare spare gauge and a thermometer, temperature gauge, meaning the digital gauge. Because the digital gauge, one of them failed for us. Actually, this one is actually bad. This is the one that's failed. We've been kind of just dealing with it. We know what the temperatures are given the time and that thing, because we've had it for quite some time. So if you have one, make sure you at least buy extra analog gauge for your pressure. Buy extra a temperature gauge, and maybe some piston O-rings and valving and that sort of stuff, and gasket heads and things like that. And buy quite a few spares of the the rated safety blow valve right over here. In another video we're gonna go over and show you how to what that does, what happens, how to identify something is wrong, and then replacing it. Okay, so that way in another video. And with that, you also, what the other thing we do is we kind of make sure when we turn on the pump, we pretty much don't turn off the pump, the water pump unit. And we also make sure, because I've seen you folks, quite a few of you folks have your compressor up on a bench or on a table, and then your water bucket is on the ground. Well, this ain't the greatest, folks. I mean, this is just a cheapish little aquarium pump, and not only has it has to contend with the small inner diameter of this tube. Now if you got them lower, now it has to contend with the rise of the the rise of the tube, or rise height. Okay, so you want to minimize the effort that this guy, works at. So you just make sure that it's slightly higher. Your bucket should be at the same level. If it's a 5-gallon bucket, put it at the same level so that it doesn't have to contend with the extreme heights as well, because already this thing sucks. And really you can't even put a high output pump because it's only a bottleneck. Even if you buy a high output pump, it's not gonna do you any better because of this thing. So with that said, what we used to use was something like this. So this is really great, and I really recommend it for you folks that are new to Yong Heng, where you need to make sure that your water is always running. So you want to plug this guy and then plug the compressor itself, so the water pump and the compressor itself. So when you plug this in, it's already both of them. All you have to worry about is one plug, and you plug it in and this is already running. Okay, and then when it's done, you turn this off, the pump is still running. And that's what we used to use for a while. And then had this brilliant idea that I figure I not only do this, but I plug it in direct to the we'll show you a quick little remote that we use, but we don't use this anymore, this little pigtail. We sort of plug this, we make sure this is plugged in to the outlet first, and then and we always check, we always double check. We sit back, when we turn on the pump, we sit back and watch the gauge normally, and if the gauge goes up too high, too quickly, your water is not running. Always check your water is running first before you even turn the pump on. And then the other thing is, we plug this into a kind of like a remote plug used for like dust, for woodworkers out there. They use it to remotely turn on and turn off their dust collector. So that's what we use. We'll show you a picture of it, and ours is by Rockler or something like that, I can't remember, but we'll show you a picture of it so you know. So we plug this in, and then when we know that everything's running, we've opened the valve to the tank and everything's running, because it gets kind of loud, we go inside the house, so to speak, or do whatever, and then about 10 minutes we'll automatically remotely turn off the pump, and the water will still be powered on. It'll run it, and that's what we do. Otherwise you don't have to get that. You'll just go and turn it off. So 5 minutes or 65 Celsius degrees. We don't let it go that far. It's either 10 minutes or 65 degrees Celsius. So we always turn it off, let it cool. And plus, you want to do that anyway, because your tank, if you fill it one time, your tank will sort of heat up or warm up too high, and you're not doing any better anyway with it, because thermal expansion, you let your tank cool, and you get more fill in it, So, and that's the reason why we do that, and that's just to not overwork it. And just because this can go to 4,500, PSI, doesn't mean you have to go all the way that high. We set ours to 4,300, and that's basically where we have it at. We don't run it to max. And, also, the best practice is when you first turn it on, you just watch this gauge, watch the pressure gauge, and you want to get to the right where your tank that you're filling at that area where you think the pressure pretty much is even with the compressor pressure and the tank, you want to slowly open your tank so it equalizes, okay? Because you don't want to cause this guy to work so hard so quickly that it causes a blowback, like a strong pressure back against the pump, causing valve travel differentials. So what you want to do is watch this gauge, make sure you kind of know where your tank gauge is at, and then turn it on when you think you've reached that area where your tank, where this pressure is now almost equivalent to your tank pressure, and then you open your tank valve so that way it pretty much doesn't blow back so hard and push back high pressure back into your tank, causing your pump to suddenly just have a shock, of impulse sort of a pressure. I don't know how to describe it, but anyway, that's that. So 65 Celsius degrees, 70-ish. You don't push it even further than 70. But for us, we've been doing 65, 68, like around there. Of course, the gauge probably is not calibrated, so that's why we stay within that range. And then we let it cool for, until the temperature goes completely back down to idle, normal, as if it hasn't turned on, and then we turn it back on. Okay, we repeat that process. And then this thing, you just don't crank it just because it's high pressure. Don't panic and crank it to hell. I mean, it's just a little valve. You just, as long as it's nice and snug, that's it. As long as it's not leaking, you're good. You don't have to crank it just because you're paranoid and you think it's gonna leak, and you think you gotta crank it, because this is like just, it's cheaply made, so treat it as if it's so sensitive, okay? And then also with regards to, we use royal purple, but this tended to get expensive over time, so now we've been just using the bottle. I think we didn't see too much difference between this other oil that we'll show you, but we use royal purple, and it's actually good. It's actually decent. It's really good. It lasts longer than cheap oils. But make sure if you're using oil, do not use automotive oil, folks. There's a reason why there's automotive and compressor oils. Use non-detergent compressor oil, okay? Compressor oils are made to, they're different than automotive oils because they tend to keep the sediments on the bottom, unlike automotive oil where it just everything, it lubricates everything. The compressor oil are rated for compressors, and that's what you want to use, non-detergent compressor oil, okay? They're not compatible with automotive oil. I don't care what anybody says, they're wrong, okay? Just trust me. So we use the Royal Synfilm Recipe 100 compressor oil by Royal Purple. Really, really good. Highly recommend. But now we just we have a few left in here, and we also cut this, and we can reuse the bottle, and it's easier to fill that way, and we just fill it up that way. Otherwise, we use this mobile Raros 427 compressor oil. Okay, that's really good too. Works just as well, and a lot cheaper than Royal Purple. The other thing that we use, don't use the crap that comes with the gun. I mean, with the compressor, please. Like just don't, go hang yourself if you do. I mean, just this thing will not last you, okay? Maybe it'll fill you one 90cc bottle, and then you have to replace it. Use something like this, and don't get the eBay cheap craps, or make sure this is like solid, it's thick walled, okay? Because your safety is and don't use brass fittings as well. Use stainless steel, you're dealing with high pressure. Treat it as if it's your life, okay? Because that literally will be your life if something goes wrong, okay? So we use something like this, and then on top of that, we bought a whole bunch of this. And what a lot of people don't know also is these are reusable. Unless they're too gunked up with oil and water, oil will not come off. But you can actually re-dry this. If it's just water, they'll re-dry, okay? And you can reuse them, okay? But buy a bunch of them, the longer ones like this, and then use something like this, and then you folks are gonna love this. So this will last us a lifetime. Actually, this will last us a lifetime. This is the same thing, okay? But what we do, we've never touched this package. We've pretty much been rotating what's already in here and what's in here, because this is enough to fill this thing. Okay, we just dry it. We put it out in the sun, and this thing is reusable. So this sorbent media is a water trap, and it's reusable over and over and over. I mean, so our little setup here is that we fill up well, we can't push it out, but anyway, we normally use a little plier to pull it out, but you folks get the idea. I mean, crap, this doesn't take too much. I mean, use a little bit of silicone to oil up the O-ring when you work on it, just not too much so that it doesn't hinder your air from passing through, but just enough to kind of make sure your O-rings are sealed. But we basically put this like that inside, normally on this side. It really doesn't matter, but we normally put this in place to trap the moisture. And then on top of that, there's these water trap beads that takes most of this tubing. And after one fill, we take it out, we dry it out in the sun, and then after one fill, we'll put it back, that sort of deal. So we have a bunch of this, but they come so cheap, you can just toss them. So that's the idea here. And then in short, this is how our setup is. We got a quick connect here, and put it, okay, this one. So, and we put a coupler. This is also a coupler, okay, and then we put it here like that, and then this would go into our tank, and then we would hook that up, okay, and then we're good, we're solid, okay. That's our setup, okay, nothing fancy. I mean, as long as you take care of it. And then for our PCP gun, this is what we use. One of it has this, of course, the shorter ones that came with your compressor. We use one of this on this side and beads on the other side. So it's similar to this build, except this goes in our bottle, and we are filtering air going to our gun, okay? That's the way we do it. We're extra cautious like that. But it's good practice to do it, because you don't want moisture going into your gun, and then if you don't clean your tanks or empty your tanks and air them out every so often, like we do anyway as extra, then it can also cause undue corrosion or whatnot. I mean, depends on the material build. But anyway, that's basically it. I mean, this is all we got, really. I mean, as long, oh, you folks are gonna even love this, forgot. So this will help quiet down your Yong Heng, okay, because it comes with some bolts, okay, and this is and I know this because I used to use this on my motorcycle. Bonded sealing washer. Basically, it has aluminum, like a concave shape on one side, and then the other side is what's stuck on it is like a rubber. So what you do basically is you put it and screw it onto your Yong Heng. We'll show you a quick picture of that so you can kind of see, and it'll help with the vibration. Okay, and it actually helps until it gets to the higher pressure. When your gauge reaches to high pressure already, I mean, it gets louder as it works harder. So but that will help with the vibration, and also not only helps with vibration, but it'll also dampen your sound as well. So it does two things real well functional wise. It helps to eliminate vibration on your screws or bolts so that they don't come loose, and also dampens the sound a little bit because now you don't got that much vibration on the body. Okay, but it can only do so much. Okay, and we're planning to put more on the bottom here. We just haven't had the time, but that's, I mean, it's been a long time that we've had it, and it's been great, but it's definitely louder. It makes a huge difference where, well, not so huge. I think I'm exaggerating that, but you can try it for yourself. Buy one of these, and then rubber gaskets will work, I guess, with washers, but not as well as these ones, okay? Because these ones do a lot better because they're bonded to one another, okay? So we'll show you a quick picture of that, what that looks like, so that you have a better idea. But that's basically it, folks. And again, the key part is don't overwork it. When we say don't overwork it, don't run it the whole way until it fills up your tank from 2,000 or 2,500 all the way to 4,300. You know what I mean? That's just crazy. You let it cool, you give it time, because your tank needs to cool anyway because of the temperature compensation. Okay, it needs to equalize as well in temperature, so it settles, and then you can fill it even more because thermal expansion keeps you from filling it to its full potential. Okay, so and you know, when we turn it off, or when it turns off by itself, what we normally do is release the right side of this first, and then we release this slowly to let the liquid out, and that gives you also when you do it incrementally, like we said, 10 minutes or 65 degrees Celsius, whichever comes first, you know, that gives you time to purge the liquid out of your system, and that also prolongs the filters in your filter tube as well. So take it for what it is, but that's our best practices with prolonging your Yong Heng. And then make sure you replace the oil periodically. Don't get lazy, because if you get lazy, then things will start to fall apart on you. We do about, depending on how much volume we fill at a time, but we shoot a lot, we test a lot, and we hunt a lot. So that means these things are working crazy amount of time. I mean, they're constantly running for the most part anyway, but again, they've lasted long for us. So what you'd have to do is just make sure replace the oil at least periodically, you know, like every, depending how much you fill. Like I wouldn't go beyond 5 fills, okay? We replace ours about every 5 fills, and if you use quality oil, okay, every 5 fills is good. This Mobile Raros 427 is really good. We've been using it for quite some time. It's one of the top recommended oils for compressors. But that's it. Hope you folks got a little bit of help with running your compressor and prolonging its life. Hopefully it does you well. Of course, every compressor depends on the build. When we get our compressor, we literally remove the chassis. We make sure everything is nice and tight, all the bolts, all the fittings, so nothing vibrates loose. And you know, on top of that, we make sure we have one of those plugs. So you can get them from Best Fittings. We put a plug, we let it run, and then when it reaches to about 2000 PSI, we turn it off, and then we listen for any leak. Because if there's even a small leak, that's harder and longer it has to take to fill your tank. So make sure that it's not leaking. So the way to do that is buy one of those Best Fittings plug, and plug, you know, it's like a quick connect. You just plug it, and the end is blunt. So it's basically closing this, and then you let it run to about 2500 PSI. Let your compressor run, turn it off once it reaches to about 2000 PSI, and then just listen. Listen if you hear any small hisses. Like really listen, because even the small leak can make your pump run efficiently. But it's gonna be hard for you to listen when it's running, you know. So that's why we recommend getting one of those plugs to do a test run and then listen for noises. Even if you have to get a water spray bottle and spray places just to see if it you know, bubbles. You know, water bottle with a little bit of dishwashing soap mixed in it. Don't go crazy with the soap, obviously, but yeah. And that's basically it. I think I've covered just about everything, but any questions, we'll go over them, let us know. But yeah, buy extra gauge, both the thermal gauge, the digital gauge, and the analog gauge for pressure, because one of ours did fail, and that's why we say that, but we buy 2 of everything anyway. The only thing that don't really run, oh, one last thing, see, I almost forgot. What you'll do is so if you've had yours running for quite some time and it hasn't, you know, over time you'll notice that it's not flowing just as good anymore. Just buy yourself like a gallon of you know, cleaning vinegar from like your hardware store, and just sit this in there, and you may dilute it to like 50-50 if you want, but we just ran ours 100% vinegar, or 80%. Yeah, we didn't run 100%, 80% cleaning vinegar with a little bit of 20% of water, and then we just let it run overnight. And then because the calcium deposit, when you run this for so long, it starts to build up in these tubings and in the internal cavities. So with the vinegar, it will clean that out. As long as you don't let it dry, and let the vinegar sit in there, your seals are safe. So after you do that for a good 24 hours or so, or you know, at least 6 hours to 8 hours, then run it back in water right away so that it cleanses all of the vinegar out, and then you should be safe. So we've been doing that, and actually the internal volume flow of the water increased over time because of what we've been doing with treatment to kind of kill the calcium deposits, because we just use regular tap water and they tend to have that thing in them. But that's just it. Hopefully we covered everything. We don't want to be going crazy with it, but yeah. Hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching, and more to come. Depending on requests, we may do a complete teardown of this guy and show you what we do, but that might be too long, so we'll go little by little, maybe do this, do that, but anyway, just depends on request. But anyway, that's it. See you folks on the next one. Enjoy and aloha.
People on YouTube, you call me a homo, but you think I stand by this? Well, that shit is a no-go. You're all coming one, because what